Welcome to Nite Callers Archives. Before Nite Callers became a vidcast on YouTube and Facebook, it was a live call-in show on Blog Talk Radio. We did things a little differently back then. It was a different time in the Bigfoot world. There were only a few podcasts, and Bigfoot was still taboo to talk about. We didn't have the TV shows, hundreds of Bigfoot groups and conferences, or funny memes that we have now. They were different times, folks. We've had many amazing hosts and knowledgeable guests over the years that helped get the Bigfoot community to where it is now. We hope you enjoy these older shows, as they are a phenomenal source of information and good times. If you hear a guest or host that you would love to see back on the current Nite Callers, please drop a comment. Enjoy the show.
Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone, and happy Mother's Day. It's been a great day. This May 10th, Sunday. Welcome to Nite Callers. My name is Laurie Phillips. I'm here with Bryan Wallen, who is no longer Tennessee Cherokee, known as Tennessee Cherokee, and Laurie McGrory. And anyway, we are all here today on Mother's Day. And I tell you what, I have never had so many people tell me Happy Mother's Day. I've had like 5 text messages. Of course, I'm not sure who all of them are. I think that some people sent them to the wrong number, but anyway, I was really happy to get them anyway. And so Lauren started saying Happy Mother's Day at 12:01 midnight. Now, that's devoted. That's devoted. You win.
That's commitment.
She's a sweet daughter.
I was first. No competition.
After what I did to my son this last week, I don't doubt why he wasn't so first. Let me tell everybody what I did to him. We were at the chicken house, and there was a big old snake in there eating eggs. And anyway, he was backed way up, and I was trying to pull the snake out of the chicken house with a rake, a hose, so I could kill it. It was full of eggs. It's about 6 foot long and about 4 inches around full. And anyway, it tries to crawl back into the chicken house, so I grab it by the tail. Don't ask me what I was thinking, because I don't even know. I didn't want it going back to the chicken house, is all I can tell you. I grabbed it by the tail, and I went to pulling, and it was wrapped around something, and I'm pulling and pulling. Well, Drew is 15 feet behind me. And it finally turns loose, and I sling that snake, and guess where it lands? Right in front of Drew. And he just jumps around in one place. He makes the weirdest sounds I've ever heard anybody make. He did not scream like a girl. I will give him credit for that. But he did looked like some sort of kind of kung fu thing, like fly like a butterfly, sing like a bee. Yeah, and made new sounds that I didn't know human people could make, and it was just hysterical. It really was. Did get this snake killed. It had killed one of our chickens, so it was a bad deal. But anyway, so I guess he wasn't going to be the first to wish me Happy Mother's Day because there was a snake at him today.
And then made fun of him for being scared.
Yeah. You know, well, he thinks it's funny now, so that's all that matters, you know. Several days later, he thinks it's funny. But then I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Bryan, because Bryan has something that he wants to tell everyone out there this evening. Go ahead, Bryan.
Good evening, everybody. Happy Mother's Day to all you mothers and all you children's of mothers out there. I hope you took care of your mama today. Anyway, on a very, very serious note, a dear friend of ours, Hawk Spearman, has been diagnosed with lung cancer in both his lungs, and he lost from 170 to 159 pounds in a week, 11 pounds. Anyway, this Tuesday, the 12th, Hawk's going to be at St. Vincent's East. It's also known as Medical Center East, and that's in Birmingham, Alabama. So all y'all please pray for Hawk. He's always been a good friend to us, and he's just a straight-up kind of guy. I like Hawk. He reminds me a lot of the way I was when I was about his age. He was a little rough around the edges, but you got to love him. You know, he's a good fellow. So please pray for him, will you? And I'm going to let Miss Lauren have the microphone now.
Okay, on a little bit more upbeat note, today is Jordan Warner's birthday. Happy birthday, Jordan. And as a gift to him,
happy birthday.
Oh, I'm
Happy birthday, Jordan.
Yeah, can we just say it? I don't sing. No. I'm glad you're getting such a kick out of that.
Well, if we're all singing together, nobody can tell who can't sing.
Yeah, that way y'all can't hear me not sing.
Happy birthday, Jordan Warner, who is going to be our guest next week, by the way, everyone. So I want to make sure everyone knows that Jordan has a series coming out this fall called Cryptid Hunts. It's an internet series, and it's been covering a lot of cryptid animals. So anyway, we are having Jordan on next week. Happy birthday, Jordan. Great day.
Happy birthday, Jordan. Very talented young man.
Today is a very special day because today we have decided to make our family just a little larger. We have a very, very good friend that agreed to come in and help us co-host. He is a friend from many years, very experienced man in Bigfoot research, been doing it for 10 or 11 years at least. He has great leadership qualities. He has started several organizations. And not only that, he is excellent out in the field. Very professional. Tends to be a little too scientific for me, but I love him anyway. He is methodical and very thorough. Honest and genuine. One of the dearest friends I have. His name is Luke Gross. And he began his journey when he was just a young man. She had one come right up on his mother's porch, saw it in doorway, and I'm hoping that he will begin by telling us that story and all the different adventures in his life. He said quite a few, as a matter of fact, and I believe that Luke is going to help us make this show more than we ever dreamed it could be. We're all very excited about all the changes and new things that we're going to do. As always, our audience is number one. Our listening audience, everything has been geared for you. It's not about us. It never has been. And so we want to bring you what you want to hear. We want to bring you what you need to know or want to learn. And we thank all of you, because without you, none of this would be. I want to now bring to you our new co-host, Mr. Luke Gross. Luke, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic, Laurie. How are you guys tonight?
Welcome aboard, buddy.
Well, I appreciate it, and thanks for the great intro. That's just I'm truly flattered.
Wow, I did that off the top of my head.
That was good. I loved that. You did good. Ad-libbing. That's fantastic.
Came straight from the heart. Straight from the heart, Luke.
Well, I appreciate it, and the same goes for you guys. You guys are a wonderful group of people. I've known you, Laurie, for several years, and we've been in the field before together, and it's just fantastic. I called into the show last week when Linda Godfrey was on, and what a fantastic show. What a great job you guys did. And that just kind of gave me a little bit more inspiration to say, okay, hey, this is great. This is going to work and going to be a fantastic show. And
Yes.
because everything,
I'm
you guys are so...
glad that you did agree to do it. You know, I know that you said, well, I'm going to listen to the show and decide. And I'm just really glad it was a good show. You know, sometimes we have shows where everything goes wrong. It was a really good show that time, so we did good.
Yeah, it was. It was a really good show. But I'm just glad I can be here and be able to help my friends out, and because I know y'all have been there for me, and we've carried on a lot of great conversations and talked a lot about Bigfoot and research. So, you know, that's what it's all about. It's for people learning. I've always wanted to bring forward information that I've learned in the field and share that with people. I think it's important that the general public knows about what's going on out there and has a way to hear about what's going on out there, and what better way than a radio show. And I think the Nite Callers is going to be a great show to relay information to people. Newcomers, people who may have just had an encounter, they can click on the link and come to the show and listen, and they might become as interested as I did after my first encounter. So, and go from there. But it's incredible. I really do appreciate you asking me to join the crew.
Oh, well, I tell you what, you know,
We're just so proud to have you.
we really are, because it's becoming bigger and bigger, more and more becoming involved in it, you know, because our intent is to present to our listeners a multifaceted view of the Sasquatch phenomenon. And you know, it's a big field out there. And it requires a lot to get the word out, you know, because you want to expand your audience and get more people involved. It was really coming to the point where we needed someone that could come in and give us a hand, and you are the man, Luke. You are the man. You've got graphic artist talent. Not only that, but you have your experience. You have good people skills, great radio voice. You're perfect. You're perfect for the job.
Well,
I'm so glad to have you here. Plus, you're a good friend. Friend. So, you know, I mean, we're such a special little group here because we all trust each other, and to have another person on board is just like, it's wonderful. So, I wanted to ask you, yes, it is. We're going to kind of, you know, play it free and loose today, and we don't really have it. We're not going to have a structured interview like we normally would, but I would like you to, if you would, kind of tell everyone how it began for you. I do that with all our guests. I want to know how it began.
Well, it began, for me, it began in 1984, and I've always been an avid outdoorsman, hunted and fished and hiked and backpacked all over the country. And, you know, there'd be times I would go spend days in the mountains just backpacking around and observing wildlife. And, of course, this all started when I was a kid in school. I loved wildlife, and I used to do extra credit work for my earth science teacher. And I just loved it. And in 1984, I was living in Texas, and my mother had moved onto some property just outside of Greenville, Texas, and my brother was living on the same property. Well, my wife and I would drive out and visit her on the weekends. Well, one night, my wife decided to take my daughter to bed early, and she went to bed, and my mother and I was sitting up watching TV. It was November. It was a warm November. It wasn't very cold, and so she had the front door open. And we were sitting there watching TV. She was in her recliner, and I was on the floor. We was just, you know, simple chit-chat, and we glanced at the TV. Well, all of a sudden, she kind of reached down and tapped me, you know. She tapped me. She said, "You see that?" And she kind of pointed towards the front door. Well, the front door wasn't but 12 feet away from us. And at first, I didn't see anything, but then I seen something on the porch, but onto the side, to the right side of the door. And all of a sudden...
I'm trying to picture this, Luke. Was the porch light on?
No, the porch light wasn't on. No.
Okay.
And anyway, all of a sudden, this thing turned and faced the door. It walked right up to the door. and it was facing us 12 feet away. I immediately scooted back towards the wall, and I think I burned all the hair off my rump as I scooted back because I was sitting on the floor. But and my mom, she cupped her mouth and gasped. It scared her. It scared me, and I'm sitting there going, "What in the world?" Because being in the outdoors all my life, and I had thought that I had seen every possible animal there was to see that was in the outdoors. Well, this wasn't the case. This wasn't registering with me. I had everything documented in my little journal that, this animal is this animal is this, and this creature didn't match any of those descriptions. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, this doesn't belong here. This is not supposed to be here.
I thought the same thing when I saw one. It was like, not real, not real.
That's what I was thinking. I was trying to analyze what I was seeing, but nothing registered. And it took me, I sat there in just shock, and my mom sat there in shock. I suppose I was in shock. It took me 5 minutes or more to get up the courage just to go look out the front door. But before that, it had actually turned to the right, and it took one step off the front porch. And I got to get a good profile shot and then see its left hand fairly well. So it was scary, and it took me 5 minutes or so before I could get up the courage just to go look out the front door. But that was the beginning of my Bigfoot, not my research. That was in '84. I didn't begin my research until 1997. I kept my mouth shut.
Did you tell anybody about it? Oh, you didn't. You didn't.
I told a few close friends and family, a few family members about it. And some of the family members laughed at me about it, said, "Nah, you guys didn't see nothing. You don't know what you're talking about." And the ridicule began from family itself, so therefore I just kept my mouth shut to anybody else. I didn't want to get ridiculed and called crazy or anything else like that. So it wasn't until 1997 that I got on the internet and went to the IBBC, which at that one point in time was run by Henry Franzoni, which I believe is going to be one of the guests on the show.
Yes, he is. We've got Henry coming up on June 7th, I think.
Yeah, and I posted my report there and on the IBBC. And not long after, I was getting phone calls from researchers, and they asked if they could interview me, and they came over and interviewed me, and I joined the group, and that's where my research started, was in 1997. So
the first group you joined was Henry Franzoni?
That was one of the. That was one of the first internet.
Oh, I did not know that.
So I can actually kind of thank Henry for, letting me post that report there, because he actually had a helping hand in getting me started in research. So, in a roundabout way.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So continue, if you don't mind. Continue.
No, that's fine. And so, from 1997, I was researching with the GCBRO in Texas, and I left the group it was early 1999, but during time of researching with the group, had several other encounters with these creatures. I couldn't explain it away. I couldn't explain what I was seeing, what I was finding, what I was hearing, and I attributed it to Sasquatch or Bigfoot. Vocalizations coming through the woods that was just rattling your bones that you could not attribute to anything else. And I had a lot of this happen during the time I was with the GCBRO. And then I left the GCBRO and founded the Texas Bigfoot Research Center in 1999. Then continued my research and left the PBRC, I believe it was in 2002, and became an independent researcher after that. And had some incredible things happen that I believe were Bigfoot related. A lot of them I didn't see, but a lot of them I have seen. And then I had while with the GCBRO, I had 2 sightings in 1998, but it was a sighting of 2 creatures at the same time. They were crossing a High Line right-of-way. Myself and Bobby Hamilton was actually out driving the back roads looking for tracks across a dusty road. This was in July, and we come to a big mound of a big brush pile on the road, so we had to turn around. Well, they'd been doing some clear cutting in this area, doing some road work on a bridge in the area. So anyway, we had turned around and began to drive east, and we drove around another brush pile. And when we drove around another brush pile, up on top of the hill in the middle of the Highline right-of-way were two creatures. And we weren't expecting this. One was a bigger one, I can only guess probably 7.5 feet tall, and a smaller one, which was probably 6 feet tall or so. Both of them dark in color. The big one looked at us and began to walk across the Highline right-of-way to the other side, but the smaller one stayed behind for just a few seconds, just looking at us, and then it followed the bigger one to the other side of the clear cut of the Highline right-of-way. So that was my second sighting. And then my last sighting was in 2000, actually where I had my first sighting at, except it was about 40 yards away from where I had my first sighting. I moved a mobile home onto the property where my mother was, and I was at my mom's house one night visiting, and it was about 10 o'clock. This was in November again, and I decided to go home. And my mom would walk me to the front porch, and we stood on the front porch for a little while and started chatting. And all of a sudden, I said, okay, well, Mom, I'm going to go. And I walk off the front porch and walk around the house, and I go into the shadows. I didn't have a flashlight or anything. And she has a high-sodium vapor lamp outside of her house on the south side of the house. So as I was walking, I heard a swishing sound. And this sound I recognized because from some of the things that had happened I was with the first research group I was with, and it was a swishing sound. It was through high grass, and I realized what I was hearing. And so I got behind the cedar tree, and I'm waiting. And at this time, my brother lived on the same property also. His little dog was over there on my mom's front porch waiting for me to leave. So she was with me also. Her name was Feisty. And so we was standing there behind the cedar tree. This little dog was not making a peep, was not barking at all. And all of a sudden, here, this gray, tan, khaki colored looking creature comes walking down the fence row under the light.
It was light colored.
Yeah, it was light colored. It was the same color. As a matter of fact, it was about the same color as the first one that I had seen, which I found that was pretty interesting. But
do you think they were the same ones, possibly?
I'm not sure. I took note of a branch that was on a chittim tree where its head was, and this one was almost 9 feet tall. It was between 8.5 and 9 feet tall. And the first one was 7.5 feet tall. So from the measurements on my mom's front porch. So I don't know if it was the same one, but it's very possible it could have come from the same family. But anyway, it had stopped, and it looked one way, and then it looked another way, looked left and right, and then took off into the shadows, heading towards another tree line. In this area, you would drive down the road, and you would not even consider, you wouldn't entertain the thought that Bigfoot could actually inhabit this area.
Really, it doesn't look like it doesn't look like a hot spot at all.
Mm-mm. No. But after further research of the area, you find out, well, yes, it is possible that they can be there, and there's wildlife and other things that can sustain them. Anyway, that was my last sighting, and during the whole time, this little dog never made a peep. It was totally quiet and just watched it walk by. So to me, that kind of told me that maybe this little dog knew not to bark.
Yes. Uh-huh. Cookie's that way too. Mm-hmm. She doesn't really pay them any mind. And of course, when she was younger, she did. But as she's gotten older, she doesn't pay them any mind. I think it's a strange. I wish I could explain that. It seemed like to me that a dog would be terrified of something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And especially her being part Chihuahua, everything that's bigger than her is a threat, and she goes after it. Big dogs, people, but she never did with these beings. So, I don't know.
Yeah, you hear so many different reports of dogs actually going into the area, they get wind of something, and then they're back out again immediately, terrified. from hunting dogs to
either that or they go in very aggressive and then you don't hear from them ever.
Right.
Or you just hear a yelp and
they become a blood splat on a tree,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they just get skinned alive or something.
Yes. There's all kinds of horrible things that we've heard happen to dogs and being killed on a chain, and things like that. I actually even know people who have lost their dogs to possible Sasquatch. And, that's terribly sad. But I believe if you show them these animals are very dear to you and they are part of your family, I believe they'll leave them alone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, someone had told me that a long time ago. I don't even know where it came from. But I wanted to believe that. So I made a conscious effort to show them, if they were watching, which usually they always are, and to show them that these animals were my family, my baby, and I've never had a problem. So,
and it could be, it could also be that the animals, the creatures, the Bigfoot, become accustomed to this dog being in this area, and maybe it's not an aggressive dog, and it actually doesn't. It's not afraid of its location being given away by the dog, because considering dogs' hearing and sense of smell is so much greater than ours, they could always give their location away, which I find very, very plausible. I have a good friend. He's had some things going on with Bigfoot and his dog. He claims that the Bigfoot is actually coming up and tormenting this dog just on the other side of the tree line, throwing sticks and rocks at it, and but not really getting aggressive with it. But the dog is incredibly aggressive. It's a guard dog, and the dog is kept on a chain at all times because it will attack. But it's almost like it's tormenting this dog. But I find that very interesting, the relationship. But then, of course, you have aggressive Bigfoot too. Some you've heard several encounters of people having seeing aggressive behaviors displayed in Bigfoot. Also, I've been there and done that, but it's quite a thrill. Let's put it that way.
I was just interested, just to back up here just a second. The very first night back in '84, when you and your mom were watching television,
mm-hmm.
and you caught the view of the one up on your mom's front porch.
Yeah.
And that night, I know you said that, it terrified you, and I know it did. I was just wondering, later on that night, did you ever get up enough courage to walk out there and just sort of walk around the front yard?
Oh, yeah. It took me, like I said, a while just to open the front door, but I did go outside and meander around a little bit, and there was nothing new. It's like, okay, it happened, and there it is.
It's gone.
Yeah.
I understand. I do understand why you kept silent for so long, because we all know most of the time family will treat you worse than anybody.
Yeah, this is
I don't know why.
This
seems
is
like
true.
some of the people that are supposed to be closest to you lash out at you the worst.
Mm-hmm.
But that's
well,
been my experience.
My family has accepted what I am now, but they still can't accept the fact that I'm Republican.
Yeah.
I have a problem with me being a Bigfoot searcher, but no, I can't be Republican. Oh, goodness.
But there's so much information out there, and so much information that's I'm sure that's not being shared. People are sitting on it, holding it close to their chest, and of course for good reason. Not having maybe the evidence that they have hasn't been analyzed yet, and then they don't want to put it out there and say, oh, this is what I got. This is Bigfoot, and then all of a sudden it comes back. No, this isn't Bigfoot. I've experienced that before, and recorded the sound in 1998, and I think I was telling you guys about this not too long ago, or maybe the other night, and I thought that this sound was, it was just when I got started. I was new in research, and a group had recorded this sound, and I believe it was in Pennsylvania. It was a 4-tone call, And they're saying, well, this is a Bigfoot sound. And I said, okay, great. And so I recorded the same sound in 1998, in October of 98, and I said, I got the sound. I got a Bigfoot sound. So what did I do? I go out there and post everywhere, well, I got a Bigfoot sound. And listen to this, and it was the same call. Well, I think it was 4 years later, I was doing some research on barred owls on the internet, and I discovered a website that a couple had that actually did research on barred owls. They had actually recorded the same sound and had a visual sighting of this owl making this call. Well, what did I have to do? I had to back up, and I went public, and I told everybody. I ate a bunch of crow. I said, I was wrong. That was not a Bigfoot sound. It was a barred owl call. And I'm not saying they don't mimic barred owls, because I doubted that for a very long time. For a very long time that they did mimic barred owls until one night in 2006 I had something happen that changed my mind. And so now, I do believe they mimic barred owls, some of their calls. And that incident there was actually 11 people there. The Texas Department of Wildlife was involved. The county sheriff department was involved in this, along with 11 other witnesses. And it was quite a night, though. It's at a cemetery. And I think I've told you guys this story before.
I'm sure you have on other radio shows have told the story, and probably there's a great deal of people out there that are listening tonight that have heard the story, but there's always a chance that someone has not heard it.
Right.
I know Lauren hasn't. I love to hear the story. So can you relate what happened the night at the cemetery?
Yes, I can. Well, this happened in November 11th, 2006. And myself and several other people of my research friends had been invited to be guest speakers at a paranormal research group's meeting that they were having. They were ghost hunters, and they'd asked the man who was the director of the group was interested in Bigfoot, and he wanted somebody to come out and share information about Bigfoot. So I've gathered several of my friends up, and we all agreed to go. And so we went out to this area. As a matter of fact, Todd Pertain was invited to go there too, and he...
I love Todd.
So we went and gave our speech, and we decided, we was going to go... they wanted to go out to a cemetery and kind of show us what they did. And so we proceeded to go to this cemetery way out in the middle of nowhere. It was actually it was a slave cemetery, very old cemetery, and they were going to do some EVP recording, I believe that's what it's called, and do some recording, trying to get ghost sounds. Well, we're all standing there in the middle of this cemetery. Well, let me say this. On the drive down there, as we're going deeper and deeper into these woods, my wife, she taps me on my shoulder and she tells me, now, this looks like Bigfoot country to me. And if we have a Bigfoot encounter tonight, I'm going to kill you. I am going to kill you. And, I said, no, it's all okay. It's all okay. Well, needless to say, I'm still alive. But anyway, we proceed to the cemetery. We park our vehicles there, and we go into the cemetery, and we start walking around. And, of course, the Bigfoot researchers start spreading out, heading towards the tree lines. And everybody else is kind of milling around the headstones and looking. And so when we get there, me, my wife, and one of my friends, we head to this one corner of the cemetery. And I told them, I said, you know what, something's not right here. Something doesn't feel right here. And they say, yeah, I know, it's awful quiet here. Okay, well, maybe it's because it's November and wintertime and all that. Well, anyway, the director, he said, okay, hey, everybody come on, everybody be quiet. I'm going to try and do some EVP work. So everybody gathered around and got real quiet. And all of a sudden, from nowhere, this howl comes from the northwest to us, from us. And I'm listening.
How far away? How far away was it, Luke? Was it close?
Probably. It sounded like it may have been 150, 200 yards into the tree line.
Well, that's close.
And anyway, we're sitting there, and this was a howl, and it wasn't a coyote, it wasn't a wolf, and I'm trying to analyze this, so I tell everybody, say, hey, come here, have you ever heard anything like this before? And I wasn't thinking Bigfoot at the time, but this howl did not sound canine to me for some reason. And I'm asking Ray, do you know what that is? No. And most of these people that's in the Bigfoot research group were outdoorsmen, avid outdoorsmen, and been in the field before. And they said, no, I've never heard it. So I got a wild hair, and I said, I'm going to try something, and I'm going to put this to the test right now. So I just walk up to the tree line, and I yell out the most loudest barred owl call attempt I can make. And I'm sitting there, and I get a response. Well, I get this very crappy sounding owl call back. It was a crappy imitation of a barred owl. And everybody looked at each other, and I said, oh my gosh, I can't believe that just happened. I was just floored. And I said, okay, I'm going to take this to the next level. And I walk up, and there's
in the chat wants to know, did you record the howl?
No. Rick Wilson has what little bit of the howl that was made recorded.
Okay.
So, and he's in Kentucky, so he has the sound. But anyway, we were just standing there after this howl, and I just say, okay, or after this barred owl response, and I say, okay, let's take this a step further. So I walk up to a tree there's an oak tree that was in the middle of the cemetery, and I grab a fairly sturdy branch off the ground. Well, I whacked this tree. I hit this tree 3 times with 1 second intervals in between each knock. I knocked on this tree 3 times. And as soon as the third knock finished, from our due west, not 35 or 40 yards in the tree line, if that, this roar comes out of the woods. And you should have seen the people run to the middle of the cemetery.
All these paranormal...
the paranormal, and nothing against paranormal researchers, but this was something that was totally unexpected. And nothing against them, but they were scared and they ran and huddled in the middle of the cemetery.
Yeah.
And you know, all the Bigfoot researchers spread out. And I go to the left, and my wife goes to the left, and Billy goes to the left. Rick, the director of the paranormal group, he goes in another direction, so he's really into this. And so we're standing there, and to my left, where Billy and my wife was, you hear something rattling down through the trees and hitting the ground. Billy looks over and he says, rock. Okay, there was a rock. Then you hear something hit the ground and roll again. Rock. Rocks were coming from the creek to my left, which would have been directly behind where they were standing. And then all of a sudden, from behind us, another roar comes out of the woods. The same kind as the first time. And by this time, everybody's just kind of, okay, what's going on? So the rocks continually are coming. And during this time, my wife is trying to get closer and closer to where these rocks are coming from. And I'm telling my wife, Cassie, and I said, get your butt back over here. Don't get that close. Don't get that close. Because the closer she got, the more frequent the rocks were thrown.
Right.
And I'm saying, okay, no, come back. So then all of a sudden, this truck comes barreling down the road very fast. And then you hear brakes hit. And then you hear a big thud hit this vehicle. This vehicle runs into something. This vehicle runs into something. And he stops and then hauls butt. He takes off again. And, well, it wasn't too much longer. There's another howl that comes from behind us. And the activity level kind of stops. And then all of a sudden, here comes the deputy sheriff and the Department of Wildlife shows up.
More.
Yeah, it wasn't too long after the thud. And the only thing we could figure was that whoever ran into something ran into an animal. and had called the deputy sheriff and the wildlife department, and it come to find out that the deputy sheriff there actually had a sighting on that same road earlier that year of something like that.
Cool.
Yeah, so it was a pretty good encounter, and as of right now, there are some people that...
What did they ask you when they came up, like, what are y'all doing here, or did they question you at all when they came up? Or
there wasn't a lot of questioning. We told them what we was doing there, that that we were Bigfoot researchers, and Rick, he had I think he had contacted the sheriff department before we went out there because you get harassed. But to me, it's just funny that they show up with the lights on and there's a game warden there at the scene when this takes place. But that was a very interesting night. And to this day, after that incident took place, we made some very good friends. After that, one of my dear friends, Ash Tucker, was there, and she is a trooper and goes into the woods with us now whenever we go. She says, I'm there. I'll see you when we get to the woods, okay? So, but that was a fairly decent encounter with a lot of witnesses there.
I would have said it was a great encounter because you didn't have a visual, but you had confirmation. You had a previous sighting there. You had the rocks being thrown. You had simple vocals. You had a lot of phenomenon there, or a lot of activity that would, in my opinion, would indicate Sasquatch were in the area.
Well, you're right, and there was something else that happened. Something else that happened too. Let me go ahead and tell this. While we was there, Rick had taken his flashlight and had pointed it towards the tree line, and actually was picking up eyeshine in the direction towards the creek where the rocks were being thrown from. And Rick had started snapping pictures around the tree line with his camera. And he did get something on film, but it's not clear. You might call it another blob squatch. It's nothing to confirm the existence of these creatures, but he did get something there on film. But it was pretty interesting, to say the least, and I made some good friends. Some more friends, should I say.
Yeah, Laurie and I, this past winter, were on an outing, and we had the law come down upon us.
Oh, yeah.
They drove in there, they really thought they found somebody out there having a party and drinking, and he just couldn't. This was a young guy. Yeah, he was in his mid-20s, I guess. And my son was there, and her son was there, and he shined the light all around, and he just could not believe he couldn't find some alcohol or something to bust us for. He finally, stood there and talked for a while, and he said, y'all have a good night.
Yeah, there was just a huge group of people all around the fire. And he comes driving up, and there was not a drop of alcohol on any of us. All of us were kind of cold, stone sober. And can you imagine what he thought about that? Like, how it has been unusual. Out there in the... What did we tell them we were doing? Did we tell them we were owl researching, or what?
Yeah, we told them we were barred owl researchers, and we were from all over the country, and we met on the internet, and we get together like this 3 or 4 times a year.
Oh yeah, we're all owl people. Woo-hoo.
Yeah.
I've had the same exact thing happen.
We had good luck that night. Laurie and I and my son Jacob were watching a foot playing peekaboo from behind this big pine tree. And we watched it for quite a while, didn't we, Laurie?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
Well, I will tell you this. I was in the field with Laurie, I believe it was last year. I think it was last year. And we was in one area, and we was researching, but we had heard some barred owls. And Laurie began to call these owls. And I was so incredibly impressed with what Laurie did. She actually called these owls in and communicated to some degree, I would say, with these owls by mimicking their calls And
owls are so cool. I love owls.
And I was so impressed with that. I'm sitting there just...
She is a fantastic caller.
Yes, I had this huge grin on my face, you know, and just being entertained. It's like going to the theater, you know, and watching this all unfold. Here come these owls, you know, within 30 feet of us up in the tops of these trees and carrying on. And
there's me.
Oh, no.
You were following her around like a rock star.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly.
Yeah.
But it was wonderful, and that was so cool just to see that happen.
Well, she is very gifted at that now. I'll have to agree with you, Luke.
It was totally awesome.
I mean, she is dead on, accurate, pitch, tone, duration, everything.
I'll just say this. I learned from them because I've recorded them so many times and heard them, and I practiced until I could sound just like them. And unfortunately, it's really actually a bad barred owl call that will bring a Bigfoot in, not a good one. Good barred owl calls bring in barred owls.
I remember that night, Laurie. I said, well, I'm going to try a barred owl call. Let me try one. And I made an attempt at it, and you said, you had told me, you said that was the most pissed off sounding barred owl call I've ever heard. I believe it was something along those lines. You are very pissed, you're very loud. And then, you know, it was my attempt. I said, okay, I tried, okay, quit. That's enough for now. But
that's productive, though. That's what they like to come in and investigate.
Yes, they do. Yes.
You know, it's something different.
And, you know, that was interesting. The area that we was in... I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. But if you sound too close to a real owl, they're not going to pick up on that. But if it sounds off, it doesn't sound like what they're always used to hearing. Well, they're very curious about that. We'll come to it. That's what I just wanted to say. But go ahead, Luke. I'm sorry for interrupting you.
Well, I was just the area that we was in. I'd had something happen to me. This is before I had a first visual of a Bigfoot in 1984, but in 1983, I was hunting the same area we was researching in 1983, and I had built a deer stand up in this swampy area, in this same area, and I'd walked out to my tree stand early in the morning, way before sunup, and I get up in my tree stand, and I'm waiting. I looked around and made sure there was deer coming through the area and everything. Well, I'm sitting in my tree stand. It's dark. This was in October 1983, bow season. And all of a sudden I hear a tree fall. You know, and I say, okay, that's a shallow root system on a cypress tree. And no problem. That's what that was. Well, then another tree falls, except it was closer to me this time. Same thing. And,
oh, my God.
And at this time, I'm sitting there going, okay, maybe the tree was very tall and it fell over and hit the other tree and knocked it over. But that wasn't possible. This was the distance between the first tree and the second tree was way too far apart.
I have to ask you, Luke, at this time, did you know what it was?
No, I had no clue what was going on.
Well, that makes it all better. When you do know what it is, that it's really...
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why I was, always being the analytical person that I am. I'm saying, okay, that's what this was. But when the third one got pushed over, or fell over, whatever you want to call it, then I got worried. Because there wasn't any sounds going on at this point in time. It was dead quiet. And I'm sitting there going, now that's way too weird for me. That's weird. But I continued to sit there in my stand. Nothing ever happened. Nothing happened. I didn't see anything or hear anything else but that. But I didn't see any deer either that morning. And then come to find out later on after I started researching that there was actually Bigfoot activity in this area. And that's where we were the night that you were making all the owl calls.
Yes.
So I found that pretty interesting.
And I was really surprised because this area is extremely, extremely hot. It always has been.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you and I have discussed this before. A lot of times, you know, an area can be really hot and active, but you don't know what happened before you got there. You don't know if they had a troop of Boy Scouts in there, or you don't know if they went in there and control burned in some areas, or if, you know, you don't know what happened the weekend before you got there.
Right.
You know, so sometimes an area will be really hot, and sometimes it'll be just like, where are they?
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of felt that way that weekend. It was like, where are they?
Yeah, and we experienced some neat visuals and things as we hiked further in, and I remember some of the scenery that you get to see when you're out in the field is so incredible. Even at nighttime, you know, if the moon's just coming up and you're down in this small creek area, and the moon's shining down the creek, just coming up through the trees, and you have this fog rolling down the creek, and, you know, that's only something you can see if you're in the field and enjoy, and you put that in your memory, and that's there forever. You know, there's
beautiful, wasn't it? Beautiful.
It was absolutely gorgeous, and you know, it's not just, you don't go out there researching and trying to interact with these creatures just for that reason, but it's the whole experience. It's experience the outdoors, the other wildlife that you see. That's what makes the trip. If you get to encounter a Bigfoot and see a Bigfoot or hear one, that's just a perk. That is just a perk.
I totally agree with you on that, because if all you did was go out in the woods and try and hope to see a Bigfoot, you're going to come away disappointed, because you are missing the whole picture.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have that entire picture in the first place, you're not likely going to see one anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but
oh yeah, it absolutely makes sense.
Yeah, you have to really be deeply involved in everything that is going on around you.
Yeah, you do. And the thing about it is, if I'm going into an area to research an area, okay, or to see if I can find tracks or any sign, I do not go into the area like I'm hunting. I'm not going in the area hunting. As soon as you put on go into the hunting mode, you have become a predator. You have become the human predator. As soon as your mindset is like that, you are a predator. But if you go into the woods relaxed, comfortable, looking around, and just in not making, you know, any moves that might be taken as a threat to any wildlife, you have a better chance of seeing something that way than you do if you're in the hunting mode.
Exactly.
And
I
you know,
agree,
a lot of people,
because some people become so focused on their prey, they don't notice anything else.
Yeah, this is true. And you know, some people go in and become totally camouflaged and disappear, and that's fine to go in that way. But if you're not going to go get up in a tree stand and sit totally camouflaged and still for 8 hours in a tree, and you want to move around, then that's the way to do it. That's the way you move around. Like I said, I had documented different types of wildlife when I was a kid, and learned some techniques, you know, of how to conceal yourself and you know, just take notes and so on and so forth. But over a period of time, you learn things. I may have told you this story before, but I'll tell you again. I was hiking the Santa Cruz Mountains in Arizona one time, and I was just hiking along. I broke trail and was hiking up the mountain. And this was a 9.5-mile trek up the mountain. And as I'm walking, I look and I see there's a buck mule deer bedded down. The most beautiful animal I've ever seen. A huge rack. Beautiful, beautiful male buck mule deer. Did he get up and run? Did he jump up? No. He stayed put. He looked me dead in the eyes, and I looked him back dead in the eyes. Our eyes locked for a minute. Every bit of a minute, we was looking at each other. I did not make a move. I just watched him. Well, after that minute was up, he stood up. He didn't jump up and run. He stood up and started walking off, and he turned around and looked at me and just continued to walk off, not running. And to me, during this time, he had determined that I was not a threat to him. And even me being a human, not being in camouflage or anything, with this huge red 60-pound backpack on my back, he determined I wasn't a threat. Therefore, he was calm and remained calm and got up slowly and walked away from me and turned around and looked at me. Of course, mule deer actually...
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. That's fine. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. That reminds me, and I have noted the same thing that you're talking about right there for a very long time. But I can't prove this, but I do honestly think that when we're in the predator mode, like we're hunting or we're upset or frightened or whatever, it changes our pheromone body chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe all the animals that have great senses of smell can actually pick up those scent particles and tell the difference between this guy is trying to kill us or this guy just walking through the woods.
Mm-hmm.
There's something else
I really
I'd like to mention too, is that a lot of people, a lot of human beings have this ability. It's kind of a sixth sense. When you feel like somebody is watching you, do you remember sitting in class and just all of a sudden you'll turn and look behind you and there'll be somebody over there looking at you? Animals have this also. And I've heard of hunters actually sitting in their stands with their eyes just barely open. And that deer would not feel them looking at them. And they would come right up to them, not even know they're there. And I believe there is something to this, honestly. It just as we can feel when someone is watching us, just as we can feel when we are out in the woods and we know there's a Sasquatch watching us, we can feel it on us. It is the same thing they feel when we are looking upon them.
Mm-hmm. I can attest. I can verify that because when I hunted, I hunted quite a bit, and I never. When I was hunting, I never looked any of the animals that I was about to shoot or that I was hunting. I never looked them in the eye. Never. Yeah. I never made eye contact with them. As a matter of fact, I'd look away from them until I was ready to make my shot with my bow. Yeah. I would look away from them and just watch them with my peripheral vision, but never make direct eye contact. But when I looked at them, they would start getting nervous and they would start getting antsy. And you could tell by their body movements of what they were doing, of what they were about to do. And most of the time, they would move out of the area, run, get scared, spooked. But if I didn't look at them directly, they stayed calm. So I believe that there is something to that. I think it's very possible.
We are taking calls now. That number is 646-716. I think we do have some calls.
We have a 651 number that's been on, I don't know. I don't.
They may just be listening in.
615. Are you just listening in?
Yeah, I'm just listening in. Thank you.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you for listening in.
918 area code. You're on the air.
Hello, 918. You're on the air. Hello. Are you just listening in, 918?
Yeah. Let's try the other one, Laurie.
Okay.
The other one's Crow, I think.
Oh,
903 area code.
Okay.
903.
Yes, 903. You're on there.
Hey, Laurie.
Oh my gosh, I know who this is. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I just wanted to call and tell Luke he's doing a great job. And
it's my call, everybody. Yeah. I just want to let y'all know this is my call.
I had a really great lengthy conversation over the phone with Luke last night. He's top-notch.
I know you totally stole it out of our meeting. First you tried to kill me, and then you went and called him.
Well, I knew. Yeah, I told you I was going to call him later, but yeah, we wound up talking till late in the night, and just trading stories and things. And Luke's he's a top guy. So, but he's doing a great job.
Well, thanks.
I'm glad though that you two got to talk. Really.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was totally intrigued with I'm intrigued with what his group the group Texel has been finding, and it's just a really top notch of what and they're sharing some of their information or most of their information from what I've seen, and I've seen some stuff on their website, and I said, holy cow, I've been finding some of the same stuff they are. And,
exactly.
I just...
That's what I was saying. When I talked to Mike, he was confirming what I had found. I was confirming what he had found. That was pretty cool when that happened.
Yes, and absolutely. But we had an incredible conversation, and such a relaxing, I slept like a rock after we talked for so long, but it was because I was relaxed and had been talking about one of my favorite subjects, which is Bigfoot, and Bigfoot research, and it was totally awesome. I appreciate the call. I really do.
Hey, it's my pleasure. I mean, it was nice to get to talk to you finally, because I think for about the last year and a half, there's been people trying to get us together as far as just sitting down and talking and everything.
Yeah.
And so it was nice to finally get to do that. And we spent quite a while, on the phone talking about different things in the Bigfoot world, and enjoyed it thoroughly. And you're doing a good job on the show. I'm enjoying it, and I'm going to sign off so somebody else can call in and ask you some questions. I think I don't have any questions for you. I mean, we answered all the questions I need to know last night, I think. So.
Yeah, it was a nice conversation, though. I appreciate you calling. I really
all right. And great job, guys. Talk to you later.
Thanks a lot, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Bye-bye.
Our number is 646-716-4530. I don't believe we have being notes today.
No more callers right now.
Okay.
I had a question, though.
Oh, go ahead.
Shadow Girl in the chat room was asking Luke if he ever heard any tapping sounds.
Tapping sounds, yes, I have heard tapping sounds before. As a matter of fact, this was in Oklahoma, and one of the first areas that I'd researched when I began research. And there's in the ravine, it was like you could hear this slight clacking of rocks. And then I can also add to that a grating sound. I guess it would be similar to a mouthful of pecans in this giant grinder. It was like the grating of teeth or grinding of teeth, and clicking sounds along with that also. I guess we could, I don't know what to attribute to, but just rocks being clacked together, and the other sound, I'm not sure what to make of it, but I do believe that there are other primates that will grind their teeth when they become nervous. So I have heard those sounds before.
Great.
Say again, I'm sorry?
Old Crow wants to know if you've heard rock clacking going on.
Actually, that's what I was just answering. The rock clacking would be in that area I was just telling you about, with this grating of teeth sound. I've heard that sound twice, but the rock clacking I heard coming out of a ravine in Oklahoma.
Okay, Elusive NBRT wants to know, does he think Bigfoot are responsible for stick signs and tree structures?
I think some of the structures that have been found can be attributed to weather damage, related to weather damage and ice, wind, disease on the trees. But some of these structures are so intricately woven, I think it would be impossible for a miniature tornado to come down through the top of the trees of the forest and focus on one tree alone. I can't say that a Bigfoot would do that, but there's a lot of things that just don't make sense, especially in these stick structures. Through my research, I've found, I don't know how many have gone in depth in studying these structures that have been found in the field, but several of them, probably 60% of the structures that I have found, and these are teepee structures that are in the field that range from 2 feet high to 4 feet high. These trees, the tree species, are actually food supply trees or food source trees, say black walnut, pecan, wild plum, wild red mulberry trees, for instance. And you might have grapevines interwoven into these small teepee formations. To me, that's kind of saying something there. Now, I can't say for sure this is the meaning, but if these are all food source trees, is it possible that they are saying, okay, this is the types of foods that are in this area?
Instead of like a menu.
Yeah, I guess you could say that, or it's just an indication of this. Hey,
a marker, a menu marker.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
But then some of the other structures I've seen, I was in Missouri on an investigation, and I've found one structure that was totally made of cedar trees. But all of these cedar trees were approximately 20 feet tall, 20 to 22 feet tall. And they were live trees. They had all been pushed into a triangle shape, or a pyramid shape. And in the total, these trees the roots were still on the ground, but they were all pushed in towards the center. And a 22-foot high structure that was still living. I was so impressed. There was nothing, no evidence of any bulldozers being in the area or mechanical manipulation of these trees whatsoever. So it was just, I was impressed by this. But some of the structures, I believe, are markers of some sort, and along with tree breaks. Some of the tree breaks I can't explain that I've seen. A lot of them I found, actually most of them I found that I would personally, this isn't scientifically proven or anything like that, but what I personally believe would be attributed to Bigfoot are trees along trails that have been broken over at about the between 6.5 and 8 foot tall. The trees between 16 and 20 feet tall, broken over to the direction. Now these are in my research areas, but the trees are broken over in the direction of southwest, and at the between 6.5 and 8 foot level, ranging from hickory trees to eastern red cedars, even to wild Mexican plum trees, but all along the trail. No evidence of anything been messed with mechanically or anything else like that, but they're all facing the southwest. No evidence of disease, insect damage whatsoever, wind damage, no deadfall damage from other trees falling over, but just along. So I have no way to explain what's going on here. Maybe somebody else out there is finding the same thing and nobody's heard about it. I would love to hear about it if somebody has found this before.
Yeah. Shadow Girl has a question that's related to this, and also we have another question from elusive MNBRT. The Shadow Girl asks, could the larger ones be pulling down the limbs for the little ones to pick food from these fruit and nut trees?
Well, here's a good example of that. I've found something that's interesting, especially on the wild Mexican plum tree and some of the other plum trees that grow, not necessarily the thickets, the shorter versions of these trees, but they grow, to 25 feet tall or so. But these trees have been broken over in a fashion to where they do not die. They will continue to grow after they've been broken over. The live limbs actually, half the bark on the tree remains alive. Now this may be just a coincidence, but the trees continue to grow, but at a lower level. Now could this be for younger ones to have access, or is it just something that is a coincidence that's took place after these trees have been pulled over? But the trees that were broken over were the trees that were that were taller and couldn't be reached. The lower branches would have been probably 16 feet off the ground. So those were broken over, but the shorter trees still remained untouched. So maybe it's possible that they were being pushed over for that reason.
West Kentucky Bigfoot says he has found 25 to 30 foot trees bent like you've described with tops interwoven.
Wow. Excellent.
Elusive MNBRT, and I want to ask you about his question before he gets out of sight here. Let me find it again. Okay, he was asking about nests in Ohio. There's been some nests found in Ohio. Have you heard about this?
Nest in Ohio. Actually, no, I haven't. I haven't heard about the nest found in Ohio. I would like to, though.
His question is, do you think Bigfoot are responsible for making the nests that were seen in Ohio?
I haven't seen any photographs of the nest in any dimensions, so I couldn't answer that question. But I can inform you, I have seen what I believe to be nest made by these creatures. They've been found along the river's edge, not alligator nest. They were actually, I have photographs of these also, but they were actually honey. I'm trying to think of the plan. I can't believe I just went totally blank. But they're made out of vines, and they've been pulled down from the trees and actually interwoven into each other. And the nests were approximately 8 feet in diameter and approximately 1.5 feet thick and circular. They were in a circular fashion, so they were found along the river's edges and at the base of small hills just behind the tree line. That's very thick, so I'd like to see these nests that were in Ohio. I have found these nests and seen others that have been where bear hair was found in these nests, but along with supposed Sasquatch hair, also here in the state of Texas. Except these nests were, or shelters, were made from cedar tree branches that had been pulled down from the side of the tree.
He also said that he was in there one day. This is, if I can get his name here again, West Kentucky Bigfoot. He says that he was in there one day, nothing was there, and next day it was there. That's pretty much how they work.
Wow.
And yeah, he said he saw no sign of heavy equipment. In fact, he says the trees were fine one day, and then the next time he went in, they were bent like that. No signs of heavy equipment anywhere. Why do you think they do this? Let me ask you this. Do you believe, have you ever found anything that could be a possible X formation?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
okay.
Definitely.
It's pretty apparent to most people that they believe that it means keep out. Is that what you feel too?
Well, this is, I've never...
No, we're just assuming, but...
Well, no, this is, I have a story for you. I have a story for you. I know someone who has been having activity around their home, but this activity has been unwanted activity, and he said it was coming up behind his home. It was throwing rocks at his home and sticks and branches and making a butt out of itself, basically. And so what he did, he found the trail that this creature was using to come in close to his house. Well, he had heard that these X's were meant for no trespass, do not enter, do not come in here. Well, he decided to take 2 large branches. I guess they were probably about 9 feet in length and probably, 6 inches, 7 inches around, maybe a little bigger than that. But anyway, he placed them in an X across this trail. The activity stopped at his house.
Oh, wow.
It did not cross that X.
Oh, my goodness. Really?
So I think that might lend some credence there to what people think. And to this day, that trail is not being used. So,
well, I have seen some gigantic X formations that to me said keep out with a capital K.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Some really boogery places.
Oh, yeah. And, well, I've found things, not only the X's, I've seen the X's before, but I've found other formations on the ground, but these aren't pyramid formations or they are stick formations, but they are laid flat on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them have different patterns to them. And no, these are in areas that no people have gone into. There's no backpackers, no Boy Scouts. The area is very, very deep where these have been found. And some of them are in the shape of E's, large E's laid down on the ground, but where the little stick would go, there would be an X placed there. Now, does anybody know if that is a backpacker sign? As long as I've been backpacking and hiking, I've never known this to be a sign, the shape of an E, but without the small center stick in the E and an X placed there. And then A formations.
I found the A formations, too.
These are laid out flat on the ground.
Oh, laid out. Oh, my goodness. I wonder what that means, because it was the last place I camped had one there. It was laid out on the ground. I thought someone laid it there.
Uh-huh. I found these before, and there's other people.
Somebody did obviously laid it there like that, but I'm wondering was it human or subhuman.
I've also seen them that look like a spoked wheel.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Well, someone had, who was it that had pictures of that? Chris Knoll.
Let's see.
Was
Chris
it
Knoll did.
Yes, Chris Knoll had a picture of that. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
He had some real good formations.
His light just went off in his head. Well, the lights are on, but nobody's home. Can y'all tell? Oh, my goodness. I love talking about this kind of stuff. Oh, my goodness, I could sit up all that long. And, the interesting thing about it is the more that you talk with other people, you find that they're finding many of the same things in other parts of the country.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Granted, we're all going to have weather. But, if you've got something that looks like ice damage and you live in a southern state where ice is very rare, you can't really count it as that. But then we also have a lot of hurricanes. I tell you what, since all these hurricanes have roared in the last 5 years, it's like impossible to tell what is natural and what is storm-related and what is Sasquatch-related.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's very, very difficult. Science has become less interesting and less one of the things that you look for anymore, and
I don't know how it is there in Texas, but in Tennessee here, the predominant tree that takes the beating during an ice storm is our pine trees, because they're such a soft wood, and some cedar, typically because they continue to hold their needles all year long, and in the wintertime, it usually starts off here as rain, and the temperature falls, and then they just become loaded down with ice, and they snap off. But then when you find that, you find nearly every one of the softwood trees around have some kind of damage like that. You don't find one here, one there. There's a lot of them.
Right.
So that's how I tend to look at some of those.
It's like this one area that me and somebody was investigating. We were walking through this small bottom area. It's parallel to creek, and it's just an area of riparian forest that we were walking through. And there were, hickories and hackberry trees scattered throughout. And there was one cedar about, I don't know, if it would have been standing straight up, it probably would have been about maybe 12 feet tall. But the only cedar tree in the middle of this hackberry forest was snapped off at the top, at about the 8-foot level. And it was bent over facing the southwest, the top of a cedar tree. But it was the only cedar tree there that had this damage, and there was some hickory saplings that were next to this cedar tree that had, these saplings had smaller branches that were twisted off and just kind of woven into each other right next to where the cedar tree was broken over. Why did this one cedar tree in this stand of hackberry forest, why did it break over? And then all the other smaller branches on these saplings around this tree get twisted around. Was there deer? No bear in the area. It was too high off the ground for it to be wild boar. You can contribute that some damage to trees by wild boar, but not the way this tree was. There's no way it would have had to have flown up to break this tree off. But I found it interesting that this one single cedar tree was broken over. But there was no other tree damage around it to the other bigger trees. And this was in the middle of a hackberry forest. So it couldn't have been wind damage just on the one cedar tree, because there would have been wind damage all the way around. So I agree with you. It depends. If there's a lot of ice damage, it's going to be on a lot of trees, and they're going to be laid over. But if you have like one single tree, like you say, that's it. You can question that and look for evidence in these trees. He said, okay, I see this. Oh, this is where I want to be tonight.
Good place to camp.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Crow has a question. She wants to know if you've ever found any hair, and if you have, what did it look like?
Well, let's put it this way. I have found some hairs. I had a research partner for a couple of years, and we had found some hair that was approximately 3 inches long. It was actually this hair was found on a log by a creek, and there was a trackway of first what we seen was the trackway of a single creature. Had a very curved foot. The tracks were 14.5 inches long, and we were following these tracks. Well, all of a sudden, these smaller tracks appear next to the 14.5-inch tracks. Well, the smaller tracks were 9.5 inches long. The smaller tracks veered off to the right, heading towards the creek, and the 14.5-inch tracks veered toward the log. Well, what had happened was, what we figured is that it's possible that this was a female Bigfoot carrying a baby, or by the curvature of foot, I would kind of assume it was a female. Now, that's an assumption, but the tracks appeared by the 14.5-inch tracks. So what happened, the baby went to the right, and the larger one went to the log and sat down. And we actually found the hairs on the log. It was very interesting because there was bamboo there next to the tree, and it had been messed with, broken, snapped into some of the bamboo, like it was browsing on these shoots of bamboo. But the hair samples, I guess, was about 3 inches long, 3 to 4 inches long, and kind of a tannish in color. I haven't had it analyzed, but I have found hair before. But I've seen there's another hair sample that is floating around out there right now that is an incredible hair sample. It was a wad of hair, probably. The hairs are probably 8 to 9 inches in length, dark in color. There was a mixture of deer hair in with this darker hair found.
Supper.
Pardon me?
Supper. Supper.
Yeah, supper, exactly. So, that hair sample is held by somebody else, but it hasn't been analyzed either. So, but I don't think it was handled properly. But anyway, I have seen this hair before.
Okay,
I'd like to tell everybody right now, if I could, anybody out there that's doing research, if you want to make sure that you do not contaminate your evidence, I know this for a fact. I worked for years. Before I became a nurse, I was a medical lab technologist. Take some rubber gloves with you, disposable rubber gloves. Take you several baggies, brand new ones, and that haven't been handled a lot. When you get your evidence, put your gloves on, turn your head away from it. Even your breath can contaminate and spread your DNA into that sample.
Mm-hmm.
So seal it up, put it away, and handle it as little as possible until you get it to a research lab.
Yeah.
I could just see us going in there with masks on our face and rubber gloves, going through.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, yeah, absolutely. You see that on the baggies. Are you talking about plastic baggies or paper baggies? Small paper baggies?
I always
Plastic
heard paper
baggies
was better. Paper
plastic
or
baggies.
glass bottles.
Yeah.
What
Yeah,
do you
I do know.
I've always used.
I
I've used
do know
the
that a
paper
lot of
baggies.
people make the mistake.
Mm-hmm.
With contaminating, getting their DNA into a sample, and then it makes the person in the laboratory want to pull their hair out.
Oh, I bet.
Because then you have to try to separate it, and a lot of times it contaminates it so bad that they can't even get a good profile.
Wow.
Our audience is saying paper is better.
Paper's better.
Paper
Okay.
is better because Mike Hall says paper bags are best. Plastic will sweat. And plastic can degrade samples, Crow said. So
There you
it
go.
seems to be the consensus that paper is the best way to go. We have got some very experienced people out there in our listening audience, and I'm thankful they're here to help us out with this.
I stand corrected there on that, but I do know that if you're not careful about how you handle it, and even some of your particles from your skin cells can contaminate.
Exactly, we should.
Your hair can contaminate it. Anything can contaminate it.
I would agree. I have kicked myself many times. I've found stuff that could be evidence. You might want to pick it up and take it and look at it and take it in and have it analyzed. But guess what? I didn't have a baggie with me, or I didn't have a pair of tweezers, or I didn't have latex gloves with me. So therefore, I am stuck and have paid quite a large price for not having those few items with me, to where you might be able to collect some incredible, let's say, DNA evidence that would help along with this mystery that so many are trying to solve. And I've kicked myself before.
I wonder if you could just grab a soft leaf off of a tree and use it to grab that sample up. Just throw the leaf and the sample into the...
Anything would be touching it with your own hands.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've tried that before, too. Had a stick and say, okay, I'll wrap it up in some leaves over here, or anything, grass I could find. It's just... But I made one of the biggest finds I'd ever made, and I was ill prepared for it, and I paid the price. So the evidence was gathered, but it's very possibly it was contaminated, so I wouldn't even submit it for analysis. And I've shown some of you the photographs of this evidence out there, but that was found. But just kicked myself in the rear.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that I've always kicked myself over was I was about 2 miles from the house, and I came upon a fish laying next to the bank, and it was fresh. It was dead, but it was fresh. It's still real limber, and it had a bite mark where its belly had been bit out, and it was perfect teeth impression, much larger than our mouth. Perfect teeth impression where that bite had taken, where it had taken that soft belly out of that fish. I felt instantly, I knew before I even found the fish that I felt like I was really being watched. And so when I found the fish, I wanted to take that fish home with me, because it was bite mark. I mean, it was obvious that it was a very large mouth that did that. It was obvious that it was straight teeth like we have, not fangs. There was no tearing. It was a definite human-looking bite, but much larger. But then I thought, I've got to carry this dead fish for 2 miles out of here, and I know that Sasquatch will follow me the whole way. So I just set it back down on the ground and backed away from it and got out of there. And I kicked myself because I wish I had that fish. I wish I had that
wish you had that fish. Great. Yeah, and it's just things like that. Shoot, but it's those. It's like you're just saying, well, maybe I shouldn't take this. Maybe I shouldn't. And that's almost like, if you're in an area, say for instance, when I was in the cemetery that night, and I told my friend something didn't feel right. Something just, it was kind of an uneasy feeling and stuff.
Exactly, I had that there.
I don't know what it is. Some of it, I think, it could be possible. How many of you here, let me ask you guys this, and I probably know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How many of you have been in the field, and then you're either sitting there in your chair, and you have your equipment and your recordings, and you're carrying on doing a fine job of trying to catch some vocalizations or a glimpse of one of these magnificent creatures, but then all of a sudden you feel like you do not need to be here. it's almost like somebody has taken a wet blanket and thrown over you. And you get this sense of fear, the sense of urgency, and you need to do something. You need to go.
The fight or flight type.
The fight or flight hits you that quick. And okay, now, have you had that happen to you, Laurie?
Yeah. What will happen is, with me, is I'll be walking along, and all of a sudden it's like I walked into a wall.
Exactly.
It's like I can't go any farther. It's like I'll try to go farther, and it just becomes more intense. And I end up having to turn around and go back the way I came. I can't seem to make my physical body go any further.
I've had that happen to me.
And it does. It feels almost like a huge wall of humidity, fear, anxiety, dread, danger, you name it. It's a bad feeling. Like I used to feel that before I knew about the Sasquatch. I used to run into that all the time, and my thought on it was that I was picking up, somebody must have got murdered here, or this ghost, or maybe I'm standing on an Indian grave, or I used to imagine all kinds of reasons why I felt that way. I was just picking up on the energy of the place, but yet I could go there the next day and it wouldn't be there.
Yeah, and it's this one. I remember one time I was in the field. This is one of the areas that I'd researched for 2 years solid, and I learned more in this area than I've learned anywhere else, I believe. And my son and I were in the area one time, and I had a weapon with me. I always carry a weapon. It's not to shoot one. It's just to for protection from wild boar, big cats, anything else like that. But this one night, I wanted to try something. I'd told my son, I want you to stay here. I'd been hearing some noises coming from this small creek that was probably about 60 yards from us. And I told him, I said, here, I want you to hold the gun. I want to try something. So I take off walking, and it was down this gravel road. And as I'm walking, I'm getting closer and closer to this creek, and I come to a culvert or a tin horn, and just a little bridge with a tin tube running underneath it. And when I reached that spot, it felt like a warm, wet blanket was thrown over me, and I could not go any further. I had to stop. I could not go any further. And in my mind, I'm telling myself, this is it. I can't go any further. And so I actually had to turn around and go back in the opposite direction. And when I turned around and started going back in the opposite direction, the woods just exploded. And you could hear something take off down the creek. And I'm saying, okay, what can I, was this a Bigfoot? And we've heard so much about infrasound. And I'm curious, there's so many other species out there that use infrasound. And, I'm curious if these Bigfoot use it. And to me, that's exactly what, the way it describes is how I feel and how it made me feel as infrasound makes people feel. I'm just wondering if that's the case.
I wanted to say that, I've been with groups of people where we have actually been in the crossfire of infrasound from both directions. Infrasound is a form of, I want to say communication, because it travels over a long range. Elephants use it. I think even lions might use it. There's other species out there that use infrasound to communicate with each other over a long distance. I've been with several groups of people that have been caught in what I want to say crossfire. It felt like it was coming from every direction. And we would stick it out. We would stay and stick it out just to see what would happen. And what would end up happening was we noticed that there were people that were impervious to it. They didn't feel the fight or flight. They didn't feel anything. They were like, I don't feel a thing. I don't feel a thing. Yet they were still suffering from the effect. Their speech started slowing down. Their movement started slowing down. Their reflexes started slowing down. Those of us that were feeling it we had to seek relief inside the vehicle or behind someone. I really feel it's directional. We have had some really interesting things that we have learned out there. Miss Lauren, you have to quit buzzing me. You gave me a heart attack. Thinking about us being out there. Afterwards, it was so funny. We had it wasn't really funny, but it was really unusual. We had an extremely frightening experience. We had them run in on us, screaming. There was a lot of aggression in it. To hear them coming through the woods, one of them coming through the woods just bellowing, and it was very frightening. And so we all loaded up and left the area because it was becoming highly aggressive. But before that, previous to that, we've been feeling this infrasound. But apparently there had been one that decided it wanted to roar in and challenge. And so we, at that time, this was years and years ago, we left. And we went down the road about a mile or two, and we stopped. And I noticed that even the people that didn't feel the infrasound at the time were falling asleep. And even Lauren said that it made her feel scared, but then later she was so sleepy she could hardly hold her eyes open. So there is I'm sorry to get on a rant about this, but boy, I'm totally interested in infrasound. Totally.
Oh, yeah, me too. I had looked into it, and I know there's a lot of other people out there that have that are touching on the subject right now, and I think it would be something interesting to delve into further, and because I don't know enough about it, but all I know is what I've experienced in the field, and then from what I've read, the two kind of coincide with each other. It's like, okay, yeah, this is what I was having take place. This is what I was feeling. Physically.
What I was trying to get at was it was an adrenaline-charged situation. Generally, when there's an adrenaline-charged situation, it takes several hours for people to calm down. You know, but these people were falling asleep.
Wow.
Now, you know, to me, they were experiencing the effect of infrasound. That's what I believe. You know, because normally, in a situation that adrenaline charged, that exciting, that frightening, most people will be awake, will be just animated, will be just like, oh my God, that scared the heck out of me, you know.
Oh yeah, definitely.
They don't fall asleep, you know, they are not snoring, sawing logs. 15 minutes after this has happened, it just doesn't. No.
Yeah, it just, you know, as long as, I remember before we went to before we went to the cemetery, we had stopped at a Starbucks and drank an extreme amount of coffee, strong coffee, before we went. So the adrenaline rush, in combination with the coffee, I was still wired for 4:40 at 5 a.m. the next morning, just from the adrenaline and the caffeine rush, and it was totally awesome though. Starbucks and Bigfoot, what a combination! I love it.
Oh, man, that's the best.
Yeah, and you know,
it don't get any better than that.
Yeah, it really doesn't. And if there's anybody out there listening that's never had an encounter with one of these creatures or an aggressive encounter, then you don't know what you're missing. If you're an adrenaline junkie, this is for you. It really is.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, it is. You know, there are a lot of people say, I've never had an aggressive encounter, and I've never made them mad and that kind of thing. But, you know, I have to say that if you really want to get a worldwide view of their behavior, you know, you have to see both sides. You know, you have to see them in a passive state. You have to see them in an aggressive state. It's just like you don't know who you're living with until you live with them. It's almost the same thing. Shadow Girl's asking you, Luke, have you ever experienced a humming noise?
I personally have never experienced a humming noise. I've heard I've heard of this before, but I've never personally experienced this. I don't know about you, Laurie, but I definitely I haven't.
I haven't either. Not either.
I don't think that there's many sounds that they cannot mimic, though. I think they're really the mockingbird of all hominids. You know,
we have felt, Lauren is mentioning this in chat. She don't open her mouth and say anything, but it does feel, when you are really, really in the infrasound, it does feel almost like a low-grade vibration.
Mm-hmm.
Females, especially because they're smaller framed, feel it in their chest. I remember me and Crystal would both feel it in our chest as we were having difficulty breathing,
Right.
Felt high anxiety. But we know that we could, if we wanted to, we could go inside the vehicle, and it seemed like it was less. I don't know if it was a mental thing,
Mm-hmm.
or if it was actually physically blocking this phenomenon.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
But it's definitely an interesting subject to talk about because I know you and I have talked about it before, Laurie, and in some cases, but some people haven't experienced it, and it's different, and it could be the case why a lot of people do feel sick and nauseated when this happens, because I've read numerous reports of people becoming ill, sick, queasy, having headaches, and those are all symptoms of infrasound.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. It would be something to talk about in depth at one point in time.
Well,
anything below 8 hertz is going to make you sick.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty low.
I wanted to say, we are very delighted to have you. I feel much more relaxed with you here. I don't know why that is. I guess because if anything goes wrong, then it's not just 3 of us. It's 4 of us now.
Yeah, it's 4. Okay, everybody point the finger. It was Luke's fault. Okay, there's your scapegoat. It was Luke's fault. No.
You're you'll take it on the cuff. I know it.
No, it's just I'm relaxed talking to everybody here, and this is, to me, this is what it's about. You should be able to talk to people about this in a relaxed state, and not. People have a tendency to talk more and to tell more of their experiences if you're not grilling them. You'll sit here and you're don't grill these people. I'm not going to give them the 3rd degree here. I'm not putting them on the spot here. Let us hear I want to hear what's happened to these people, what they've experienced. And I can learn a lot more that way, because if I put them on the defensive, I'm not going to hear another word. They're going to say, oh, no. I'm feeling cornered. I'm pent up. No.
They've been swatted with a fly swatter, and they're going, well, I'm not going to say another word.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why I think you'll be perfect for this show, because you have that same questioning is not the right word, curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
Curiosity to get down to the meat of things. Everyone has a skin, a shell around them that they put up automatically to protect themselves. You have to when you do what we do. And so the best way to get that shell to move away so you can get down to the best part of it, the part that can really teach you something, is to approach these people in a very calm, almost psychiatric way, a psychology type way, just to make them feel very, very comfortable, and that it's okay to tell it. It's okay.
Yeah, it is okay.
The people out there that are listening, it's okay. They want to hear it too.
Yeah, and they really do. I've had, I've just where I live, I've come up with a lot of reports right here out of the area that I live, and it's just from talking to people. It's not, walking up acting like a detective and asking all these questions. No, you can't do that. I talk to these people. I say, I hear there's a lot of big animals out here in these woods, and have you seen bears or big cats or wild boar or maybe something a little bigger even? I mean, I want to know what you've seen out here. I never dropped the word Bigfoot, but I come to find out that one of the names they have given these creatures in this area where I live is Hairy Toe. Yes, Hairy Toe. and I found that funny, but that's just one of the names that the locals have given these creatures. Another one is the Gorilla Men.
Wow.
You know, I was out walking on a back road. My wife and I, we was walking one of these back roads here by the river. We just parked our car along the side, and these two guys pull up, and they say, "Well, what are you guys doing?" And my first inclination, first thing I said was, "Oh, we're just looking for wildlife tracks and stuff like that." But then I said, "No, I want to be perfectly honest with these guys." I told them, I said, "We're looking for these tall, hair-covered creatures. It's what we're looking for." "Oh, you're talking about the gorilla men that move up and down the river." I said, "Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about." Well, they offered to take my wife and I back down onto their hunting lease and research there and show us the area. You know, that's because I opened my mouth and said, "No, this is actually what we're looking for." "Oh, the gorilla men, yeah." And I gathered 4 reports just right there. 4 reports. Just by opening my mouth and being nice and honest and relaxed with these guys instead of being all, you know, nervous and scared. "Oh, no, they're going to shoot me," you know. Sorry, these guys aren't backwood rednecks and going to kill me. You know, these are just guys are hunters and out there wanting to protect their property. But, you know, I love talking to people. I love talking to people about the subject of Bigfoot. I like talking to people about their experiences, what they've encountered. And that way I can learn more because I've been doing this last month, April, it's been 12 years I've been doing this. And that's a long time. And I still get this incredible charge out of looking at people's faces and reading them.
We are running out of time.
Oh, man.
We are out. Everybody say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye, everybody. Come back next week.
All of you out there listening in archives, we want to say thank you, Luke, for coming on board. It's going to be an exciting adventure. Also, we are going to have Jordan Warner on next week. He's a young documentarian who has an interest in the Sasquatch phenomenon and other cryptid animals. He is remarkable. So we're going to have him on next week, and I'm very excited about our new team. Everyone, say good night, or if you have any closing remarks, say them now. Okay.
I do. Laurie, Bryan, Lauren, I appreciate it. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come in and help you guys out with your show. I'm so relaxed and so comfortable being around you. It's awesome, and I feel that the show's going to do great things. You guys are totally awesome, and you rock.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
Thank
we feel
you.
the same about you, too.
Awesome. Okay, then. Good night, everybody.
All right. Good night, then. Good night to all of you out there listening. We'll see you next week on Nite Callers. Bye-bye.